Yu-Gi-Oh! Is more than a game. Yeah, it's an IP with toys and cards that depict monsters that would honestly have H.P. Lovecraft creaming his pants, and it's driven by a toxic monopolistic company who bans their own products to make more money so that people like you and me spend a fortune when the newest game formats come out. But I'm not talking about that. Because on this channel, I dissect movies and shows to try to get an understanding of what the deeper meaning is, and my victim today is Yu-Gi-Oh! The anime. So if you're into that kind of thing, maybe subscribe or at least leave a like, much appreciated. I've got a lot of thoughts about this show. It's something that I grew up with. It's something that absolutely defined my childhood when I was too cool for Pokemon, but not quite cool enough for Ninja Scroll, know what I mean? And I gotta say, it doesn't age well. Like, it's really hard to rewatch, especially Duelist Kingdom, and it's got a lot of its faults, from Yugi basically being a guy who just pulls plot armor cards right out of his asshole. I think they should make a card for that, call it Plot of Greed. Huh? Yeah, maybe? Konami, I'm patenting that, or trademarking that, whatever. Can't use it, it's my card. Anyway, back to the show. It's got plenty of faults, from Yugi basically being a guy who just pulls Plot of Greed out of his ass whenever he needs it, all the way to the fact that the game in the show is literally nothing like the game in real life. Like, if you are like me and you grew up playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And watching the anime, and you went to your, like, local tournament or whatever, and you were like, I summoned Blue Eyes White Dragon, and they're like, hey, you can't do that, you gotta tribute monsters. And you're like, alright, I give up. That's how it was. That's how it was for most of us in the 2000s. The show really set us up for failure. But like I said, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is more than a game, much more. It was one man's artistic vision come to life after being inspired by the real ancient Egyptian tradition of playing what are called shadow games. And these real-life versions of shadow games, they were meant to be a way for the living to essentially commune with the dead, acting as a unique lens through which to observe and understand the culture of a time gone by. It was a way to bond with those that were loved, even if they weren't there anymore. And in 2002, Kazuki Takahashi manifested these shadow games in his own way, in his own artistic vision, in a manga and later an animated TV show / card game known as Yu-Gi-Oh! King of Games. And like the shadow games of old, his artistic creation would act as a way to analyze our own world, its many cultures, and both the beauty and tragedy that lies within it. If, like me, you grew up with a westernized version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, a lot of this is censored out and replaced with some rather flat dialogue and boring stakes. And the first season centering around Pegasus' Duelist Kingdom, like I said, is hot garbage, to be honest, but the show as a whole is not without its meaning, and so that's what we're gonna focus on. Each season kind of has like a recurring theme to it, right? More or less, it features a tournament full of people who cheat and steal, and eventually they're all outed by Yugi and his boy Joey, who, by playing fair, with a bit of luck, and the power of friendship on their side, make it all the way to the end. Joey almost always takes the L in the end and ends up in second or third place, making him a third-rate duelist, as Kaiba says. But he walks so Yugi can run, and for that, Joey Wheeler, we salute you. I don't want to analyze each and every episode, because there's a lot, but I do want to talk about something from this show that stood out to me as thematically significant. That is, the hidden meaning of the cards, the way they bond with the players or the main characters in the show, and the 5-act structure of every single duel. First, we're going to start with the latter, right? Let's talk about the arc of pretty much every single duel that we see. A protagonist, for one reason or another, accepts the call to action, or duel rather, and begins the duel with a particular game plan in mind. But the opponent tends to subvert that plan by either cheating, setting up an unbreakable board, or, I don't know, doing something unexpected. This puts our hero on the ropes, but they pull a quick save out of their ass, maybe a Plot of Greed, I don't know, to stay in the game, usually costing them something important like their strongest card or their life points, just to hang in there for one more turn. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know how they're going to get out of it. Then the opponent, who's typically a bad guy but sometimes is a good guy, has an inner monologue that reveals their true secret intentions. And they reveal that to us as the audience, which creates dramatic irony. Then the protagonist, who is low on life points and out a really important card, figures out what their opponent's endgame really is, switches up their plan, and plays a whole new strategy that helps them win with an unexpected combo, ultimately ending in the duel, being won by the good guy, and, a lesson being learned in the process. Most of these duels are structured like this because they're there to tell a story. They're not really there to like be good dueling mechanics or like set an example for the real life card game, because it's absolutely broken the way that they play in the show. But shitty dueling mechanics aside and shenanigans aside, it's in this 5-act structure of a duel and in the cards played during that story that the hidden meaning of the show and its themes are revealed, showing how it's about more than the cards. It's about humanity and the ways in which we as humans solve problems that face all of us. There are a few key duels that I think exemplify this. The first and foremost is obviously Yugi versus Kaiba in the pilot episode. Kaiba is introduced to us as the main antagonist, as this rich, snotty brat who has a ton of money and basically tears up Yugi's grandpa's favorite card, the 4th Blue Eyes White Dragon, which I don't know why they only printed 4, I guess. I don't know. But there's only 4 in existence. 3 of them are owned by Kaiba, 1 of them is owned by Yugi's grandpa. Kaiba tears up the 4th card. Doesn't matter. Anyway, this is a card his grandpa won from an old friend, and it means more to him than anything. It symbolizes generosity and kindness and a deep love and bond, but Kaiba, who is an asshole, doesn't have any friends, so he tears it up, showing how nobody could ever get close enough to him to use their bond with him against him. In later seasons, we find that this has everything to do with his shitty relationship with his stepdad, but his saving grace is his brother Mokuba, who is the only person that makes Kaiba an actual human being and not a complete degenerate arrogant fuckboy. Now Yugi, on the other hand, has Exodia, which has 5 pieces representing the bonds of friendship and love between him, Taya, Joey, Tristan, and his grandpa. Alone, the pieces like Yugi's family and friends are weak, but together they create an unstoppable force that overcomes Kaiba's selfishness and loneliness. Boom, there you go. That's the meaning. This kind of becomes a recurring theme throughout the show and why Kaiba becomes Yugi's greatest rival. You see, throughout the show, Kaiba is all about consolidating his power, even going so far as to fuse his 3 dragons into one ultimate beast. But Yugi defeats him by multiplying his many useless Karibo into an unbreakable wall that overwhelms Kaiba. So again, we're seeing this theme of Yugi accumulating friendship, accumulating people in his life, whereas Kaiba is consolidating them. And over again, Yugi is coming out on top by, I don't know, basically being a good person and making a lot of friends and shit. The theme here is that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Then there's the duel with Pegasus. Pegasus famously uses a deck that is powered by a bunch of toon cards. They're basically cartoon versions of the really good, powerful cards that the duelists use at Duel's Kingdom, followed up by the epic card Relinquished, which draws its power by consuming others. Now this is relevant because Pegasus duels for his dead wife, Cecilia. He lost her to a deadly disease and hoped that he could bring her back with his Millennium Eye. But it's short-lived, she's not meant to exist, and so she disappears. But instead of using his brief time with her to say his goodbyes and move on, Pegasus tries to live in a fleeting fantasy to be together with her, never moving on or accepting loss, or even accepting reality. This is represented in his toon cards that are essentially cheap copies of the real thing. And when that fantasy is destroyed, he attempts to consume Yugi's power, both literally and metaphorically, with his Relinquished. Like a deadly cancer powered only by the Millennium Eye with no power of its own, this card represents Pegasus himself, stealing souls in order to try and use them to regenerate his dead wife. Strip away his fantasies and you're left with not a man but a creature who cannot fend for itself. 0 attack, 0 defense. It depends wholly on a tragic consumption that in the end renders it useless against the strength that Yugi found in his bonds with others. So there's a lot of duels that aren't just duels, but tell a story of loss, tragedy, and hope. A few others that come to mind happen in the Battle City arc. You've got Arcana, the failed magician who pushed his wife away through self-pity and ultimately does the same thing with his most important monster, the Dark Magician. You've also got Yugi and Kaiba's duel with Umbra and Luma, where they win not by playing the best hands, but by using their opponent's selfishness and greed against each other so that they self-sabotage, looking out for themselves rather than their teammate. I could go on, but now I want to move on and talk about Alright, so first for the Divine Trio, there's Ra, who gets his strength by sacrificing the life points of the duelist. I'm sure there's going to be comments in the comment section about how, no, it's about the number of the attack of the distributed monsters. I don't know. Look, I'm just reading what the card says, unlike the people in the show. Anyway, there's Ra, who gets his strength by sacrificing the life points of the duelist. Yes, I'm sticking with that. And this card is played by Merrick, the big bad of seasons 2 and 3. Then you've got Obelisk the Tormentor, who gets his strength by consuming sacrificial monsters on the field, and he's played by Kaiba. Then there's Slifer the Sky Dragon, whose strength comes not by any of those things, but by the number of cards that the duelist has in their hand, and that's played by Yugi. So each god card is a thematic representation of its wielder, and let me tell you why. Merrick, or more important, his shadow spirit, gets his strength by destroying his own soul. He's willing to give every bit of his mind and his body in the pursuit of ultimate power. This makes him a terrifying opponent, for sure. Also, it gives him a really fucking sick haircut. But he has his limits and quickly finds that a life of rage and contempt burns and destroys his soul and his life points to the point where there's nothing left. In other words, rage is a powerful tool, but it only destroys the person who feels it. Then you've got Kaiba, representing still that consolidation of strength and power, pushing people away in the pursuit of becoming your best self. He gives up everyone and everything that makes his deck strong, even his iconic Blue Eyes White Dragon, in an attempt to create a singular, powerful, and imposing beast. To Kaiba, the strong devour the weak, big eats little. And while this is great at establishing dominance, it leaves the monster alone and with nothing and no one around it to continue to power him up when he needs it most. Finally, you've got Yugi and his Slifer, who get their strength not from the monsters on the field or by sacrificing their soul, but by the number of cards that he has in his hand. Thematically, it's the number of friends and loved ones that he holds onto and cherishes that give him his power. And the more friends and bonds that he makes and he holds onto, the stronger he becomes as a person, just like his Slifer the Sky Dragon. And those final moments where the god cards face off, the archetypes go head to head, that's where the message and the heart of Yu-Gi-Oh comes through in full. Yu-Gi-Oh matters because its message is a simple yet powerful one. Life can be daunting, life can be terrifying. The things that happen to us in our short time on this planet can be enough to break the minds and the souls of any one of us. But it's through connections with others, by giving of ourselves and holding on to the things that matter and the people that matter, that we can find our way through the darkness. Sometimes the road ahead feels insurmountable, the obstacles too daunting. But as long as we don't give up and believe in the heart of the cards and the hearts of the people that we choose to stack the decks of our lives with, there's no hand that life can deal us that we can't find a better way to play. There's always a better way forward. There's always a way to win. Sometimes it's through taking a chance, and other times it's by doing the unexpected and turning our weaknesses into our strengths that we find the road to victory. And sometimes it's simply accepting our flaws and knowing when to take a step back so that we can take 2 steps forward. We just have to know ourselves. We have to know our decks. We have to trust in the people who love us in order to find our way.